Welcome, everyone, to Teach Me PCB. I'm the creator of Teach Me PCB, Mark, and I am joined here with my co-facilitator, Jesse Robinson, and course all-star, Brian Lindahl of Lindahl Engineering. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hello.
How you both doing tonight?
Tired.
Yeah, that's about says it. Tired.
I'll third that motion. Jesse, I just wanted to say thank you for helping me out with those schematic catches. Man, those are just some stupid errors on my part, huh?
Well, copy and paste errors when you do big designs. So
yeah. Well, I was splitting it up and doing a lot of things. Anyways, I spent more time than I probably had doing the a once over on the schematic. So after I fixed those hierarchical errors, having those things flipped back and forth, I went ahead and moved some pins around. I didn't really change. I did change 3-pin connectivity on the rotary encoder LEDs, but that was all just so I could eliminate all the crossovers, just fulfilling an OCD fantasy, I guess. So now our schematic looks a little more like the original block diagram that you and I generated for the course, and there's no crossovers, so hopefully there's no way anybody can possibly confuse anything on the hierarchical connections. So,
Evening, Elliot.
hey,
What's
Elliot.
up, guys?
hello.
How are you?
I'm hanging in there.
Good. So how's the course going for everybody? What can I do for you this evening? Or what can Jesse and I do for you this evening? Or Jesse and Brian and Elliot and I do for you this evening? Or Jesse and me and Brian, but not Elliot? Or just me and Elliot, but not Jesse and Brian? All right.
Nothing?
Good talk. Good talk. Is there anything anybody needs or wants?
Well, I got myself some soldering practice, so I've got a board
Ooh.
already. I'm cheating.
Ooh.
It's got problems.
Uh-oh.
So
They all
I'm,
do the first time.
trying to troubleshoot.
Well,
So,
are these
does that
problems
work?
with soldering or with life? I mean, we can offer some counseling.
Yeah. Well, I'll share this with you guys if you want to see what I did.
Yeah. So, Brian,
And,
down at the bottom, there's 3 dots next to Elliot and a microphone. And if you click on that, there's a solo layout you can hit. There we go. Show us what you got, big guy.
let me see if I can get my other camera working here.
Okay.
So give me 2 seconds.
You got it.
Eh,
So Elliot might join us with another camera. So while we're waiting for him, I did pick up some of that SAC 305 solder we were talking about, Brian.
Yeah.
This stuff is small. This is
I would
point.
say that's hair. That's fine as a hair. It's about.
Yeah, it's
what I
surprisingly.
remember being hair.
It's surprisingly stiff. I think if we were
It would
doing,
have to be. If it was like hair, you wouldn't be able to control it at all.
well, I actually expected that we wouldn't be able to control it. I was thinking we'd have to feed it through a brass tube or something to get it into position, but it's remarkably stiff. So Jesse, this stuff has a diameter of like 0.15 or 0.1, I forget, 0.01 inches. This is 0.3 millimeter. So it looks like Elliot's experiencing some connectivity issues.
Oh, it's quite an issue. How disappointing.
Maybe the
see.
old turn it off and on again trick.
That's what we're gonna do.
Okay.
Okay.
See you on the other side.
So Jesse, how's you're pretty much done with everything but firmware now. So while Elliot's figuring that out, tell us what's new in the firmware realm.
So I was trying to. So for those that don't know, this is based on the Warhammer logo, and so I was going to my local store and I wanted to show this off, and it wouldn't work. And it would only work when it was hooked to like a USB data interface. I checked it and the power was good. It just wouldn't run. So I suspect that it was something to do with the USB communication. And in fact, the calls, the Adafruit calls to the HID and the CC, which is like the consumer control, those hung if you were not connected to like an actual USB device. So I found that out and I made a bypass. So if I like hold the button when I start it up, it won't enable the USB. And then I could use it as like a light, which is a secondary goal of my project. So and that's all I did.
Heard that as a problem that reported it, somewhere in Adafruit that I remember reading that was a thing. There was a workaround, but I don't remember what it was.
Okay. Basically I just check it so I can force it into a non-USB mode if I want. I still haven't dug into the issues with the ambient light sensor. There's something wrong with Adafruit's libraries in there, but we can probably look at the data sheet and do our own because the I2C is working. It's just there's no library to pull the data out neatly. And I had talked to Yuri about seeing if he could do something with threads and with the SPI-based RGB lights. It would be nice if we could do PWM and have it run in a separate thread, but based on Brian's findings, CircuitPython might not allow multi-threading yet.
Python does not have threading per se. I will have to go read, but yeah, that's a thing. So
Well,
right.
the next step is we could go for a straight C implementation. And if that doesn't work, we can go assembly language, which I don't want to do, but that would do it.
I mean,
not only no, but
the benefit of threading is to offload like the software PWM task, which isn't necessary to offload. It's just more convenient to have it on another thread. So that could be done in the main thread. So it's not
actually
a big issue.
Those
do that.
PIO things are probably the answer for that, right? It has like those. There's something called like a PIO module. It's got like two of them.
Can you do those in Python?
I think you can use them.
Yes.
In CircuitPython, and it seems like it's perfectly suited for like driving a stepper motor or some PWM, something or other, kind of something that runs on its own.
Yeah, well, I'll probably have to have a heavier firmware person look into that stuff. We'll have to find some good examples. One thing that I have I guess not a problem with, but I wish the documentation for Python was better for the RP2040. Like they have a getting started sheet with C and everything goes in real in depth, but the Python examples are really lacking.
Well, they don't come any better than Yuri. And I'm more than happy to throw some money his way to promote some of his issues. He's got that thing where you can submit a feature request and then pay for votes, which I think you actually did, Jesse, didn't you?
I did not. I asked him about the threading and the SPI thing, and he just added that himself. And, like he just went and did it.
He's actually under the impression that you bought some of his tokens and paid to promote that.
Let's just say you did.
So someone did. Okay, yeah.
So somebody did it. He just figured since you were the one who asked about it, it was you. So somebody paid for it. It wasn't me, but I was actually thinking about throwing some cash his way because he's been great. He's been fantastic. Even though he's a sponsor and it's supposed to be cash going the other way, I don't know what you do. So Elliot, looks like you're ready.
Okay, I got my stuff figured out. So this is the whole thing on a breadboard, and it works great. Hang on, let's push this button. No resistors, no capacitors, no diodes, but works awesome. 2 encoders. I don't have any of the serial stuff on here, but it's pretty much fine. No problem. So I actually I had my first draft manufactured.
Wow.
So it seemed like the same price as like soldering practice. So here we go. And this is what it looks like.
Cool.
I just got these today. So I will tell you one thing that worked out really well, and I'd recommend it. On the Pico footprint, I filled in the holes or the mounting holes with silk screen.
Alignment.
Works really good. So
That's smart.
highly recommended that. I used the diode we were going to have for ESD protection, and smoke came right out of that immediately. So I fouled a few things up. So anyways, here's the one I've assembled. Just finished not too long ago.
So
So
Elliot, just so you know, you can leave that diode off and your board should still work.
oh, I know, because playing around with a Pico without it.
Did you
Fine.
check into why it happened? Is it reverse voltage? That would be my guess.
I think I need to look at the symbol I created for it. I'm pretty confident I hooked it up backwards. It's a short circuit in one direction.
I think that big pad right there of the three, I think is supposed to be ground.
Yes,
So,
I made all the pads big, and I think I either fouled my symbol up, so I've got the pins on the wrong pads or something of that nature. Hard to hold this with the light there, and also reverse and looking sideways. So yeah, that footprint for the Pico worked out really well. I just ripped the USB connector off. I was having some trouble with, I think one of these two switches or both of them are 90 degrees wrong. But anyways, I used 0805 components, and they're not so hard to solder, but I don't know if there's any benefit in making them that small either on this project. And I just pulled this switch off as well. So what I'm experiencing so far is the buttons work great. The encoder is intermittent, and then eventually the board becomes unresponsive. And 3 of the 8 NeoPixels work. So I was going to kind of go work through those backwards and forwards by taking it apart and then seeing when it comes back.
Usually, so you know that the NeoPixels, the dot or the slash is like pin 3 for some dumb reason.
Yes, I have this footprint. I've used it once before recently, so it works. I'm pretty confident I oriented them all properly.
The other thing is when you have one that fails, it's usually the one before, sometimes the one before it is the one that's the actual failure point. So that might help with the troubleshooting. Like if it's not sending out signals, because with my dice lamps that I got, 20% of my LEDs were bad. So I had to change them all. And then, there's a lot of troubleshooting that goes with it. And if you have a dead spot, it's that one or it could be the one before it too. So.
I think you're right about the one before it. I've had that before. So I'm going to be taking that apart. The switches, of course, are on top of it. I did 2 other things that you guys might be interested in. This is just a piece of acrylic, but it fits, ideally, it fits perfectly on the bottom there.
Dang.
So what I was going to do ultimately was add one more layer here, just a piece of steel or something, anything, wood, and then screwing it together so it was solid and sits on the desk without shorting out. And then I don't know if anyone else has a design that the alignment of the switches matters. So I was going to make some keys that look like, I don't know, pizza. But the orientation of the switches, both their rotation this way and then how they're spaced, there's a lot of play in the mounting holes because there's a little bit in the center one, but they can also rotate. So laser cut a jig, slap them all on there using the encoder as like a reference point with this hole, and it holds them in place when you solder it. So you get them aligned, and then then you put your keys on, and ideally they're spaced in a sensical way.
Wow.
That is a thing. Mine are a little wonkadoo because I didn't have any way. I just tried to align them consistently, I guess. And yeah, if I had a jig, they would have turned out a little better.
Well, if anyone's interested, I mean, kind of feels like there's 4 people in the class, but there may also be 400. I'd be happy to cut some and send them. So if anybody has like a need, just hit me up and I'll help you out.
It's very generous, Elliot. Yeah, it's really hard to say how many people are in the class at this point, because every time I think I have a handle on it, I see a new name that I haven't seen before. And we've got a lot of people that are just lurking and not interacting. And man, I got to tell you, when you interact, you learn so much more. You know? Elliot, man, I'm impressed. That is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
How did you make those little pie shapes?
Oh, 3D printer. It's a resin printer though. So it actually comes out with a pretty, see if I can focus that close. That's the kind of quality
Sweet.
I'm getting. I printed it right on the plate, so the top surface is a little whatever. But
I wouldn't call that whatever, man. That's great.
If
Looks better
it's
than the stuff
almost, yeah, I'd say it's meets the quality of a cast, like a resin casting you might do at home, and it's kind of close to an injection molded part. This the little plus in the center, that feature is remarkable. It's got square corners. It fits just like a real keycap. So yeah.
Wow.
Does KiCad let you export? I think I was looking around the other day. DXFs, or is it step only?
It does SVGs.
Okay, that's good enough.
Which is close. So yeah, I did. I went out of KiCad. Oh, actually, I lied. I designed this in normal CAD and aligned all my footprints to my original plan. So, yeah.
I noticed, Brian, did you end up using that footprint? I noticed your data plus and data minus like look a little high up. Did you pay out to check that you're getting a connection from data plus and minus on the Pico?
I have not checked further.
Did you use Elliot's footprint?
No.
You didn't, because I haven't shared it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. No, there's one in the database, in the parts database from a couple weeks ago. Andrew, somebody, not Ferguson. Yeah, I just need to print it out and compare it to my Pico. I've got the Pico sitting here, so.
So also when you do ohm it out, I noticed when I had the Pico like pressed down on there and I had a couple pads soldered, I didn't get a connection until I reflow the joint, probably just from like oxidization that's on, the top of the copper. But once you reflow your through hole, you should be able to touch the inline resistor of the USB on the Pico and then touch your pad that's on your diode that's no longer there, and just make sure you're getting a connection to the underside Pico pads.
I soldered one pin on the corner and then went straight for those 2 up there at the top as the next ones. That way you don't have any, I don't know, you have the best chance of it making contact on the surface. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it worked. We'll find out.
Okay. Yeah,
I haven't done more than one, so I can't say if it's reliable or not, but it definitely is working.
The first one I didn't I didn't have a good connection between the Pico and but I guess that underside footprint and the USB. But then the next one worked out, so it's a thing of practice. I mention it because it looks like the center of those pads are north. Well, I guess south in this view of those pins. And I think in the data sheet, they have them the other direction a little bit. They're like on center, but a little the other way. But you'll probably still hit it. And I don't think there's anything like north and south that would interrupt. Like east and west, you could bump into those through holes of the USB, but north and south, you're pretty good, and there's probably a lot of leeway.
Yeah, I'll have to put a dot in the center of these and see how they actually do line up. It looked pretty good. I think I took another footprint, a couple other footprints or land patterns, and laid them out over mine. But it is very close to the end of the board, just in general. But I guess it is very close to the end of the board.
Yeah.
How are you getting a USB cable on there?
Okay, so it's really easy. You get one you don't like,
This is what Mark had told me to do.
and you give it a little bit of surgery.
Yeah.
Focus.
Void the warranty, Jesse. Void it.
Anyways, yeah, you just give it a little bit of cosmetic surgery there.
So they don't honor warranty on those things anyway.
So yeah, Mark, what would have been the fix for that on the foundation's end? Daughter board. I mean, I don't think you're going to get a connector that sticks up high enough.
I didn't catch the first part of your question. I've been muting myself while I eat.
Oh, okay.
You said, what's the solution for?
On the foundation's end for the Pico, what could they have done to alleviate this? Like, it's kind of limiting having to have it in the middle of the board and them not breaking, or sorry, on the edge of your board if you embed it, and them not breaking out those USB connections on the outside is really detrimental.
So they certainly could have broken those out without much work. You know, they did that on the backside for that the SPI, or not. Is it SPI? I forget. They could have just made a 5-pin on the back end of that. They could have actually broken those things out as plated through holes in the middle of the board and just left them. You know, just put a couple.
What could they have done with the connector? Could they? Can you think of something they could have done that would have like lifted it off enough to be a usable connection, or not really? I suppose if it was a full width board or a thickness board, it would have helped too. Because isn't that half thickness? It's
that's like it's a 0.8. But the reason that you do the 0.8 is if you do a 1.6 and you're trying to route differential pairs, not that it necessarily matters over that distance. Your traces have to be twice as fat. You know, if you're trying to route, 90 ohms differential impedance for a USB on a 0.8 millimeter board, it comes out to, and I had Elliot confirm this for me the other day, about 32 mils wide, 8 mils space. So that's why you do half thickness, and it doesn't cost you any more. You know, the cost of a board at that's a standard thickness as far as fabricators are concerned. So actually, that's what I'm going to order my next board to be. I'm already designing to that.
It's interesting. I just as a comparison, my the boards that are inside this thing, it's a 2040. It's the Adafruit Feather version, and when it sits down flat, it's got a USB-C on it. But when it sits down flat, I can still get a connector on it, even with something underneath it. So there must be some other difference in the connectors between the micros and a USB-C that's thinner or lower or something.
Yeah, a USB-C has a lower profile, so as long as you're not doing a mid-mount like Jesse.
It did not say that like really well in the description.
I mean, alternatively, you could just put pin headers under the Pico, and that'd lift you up plenty.
Yep.
Instead of surface mounting it.
Yep.
My suspicion is that they designed that like they did the Pi Zero W, where you've got those USB pins underneath, and then people capture those with pogo pin connections when they attach them to other boards. If that makes sense. So they weren't really concerned about the profile thickness of that. But really, had they just made those plated through holes, our worries would have been over.
Or a better footprint in the data sheet.
The footprint in the data sheet was horrible. But here's the other thing that we were talking about too. To break those out, we don't need to redesign a whole board and get all the parts for the RP2040 and the USB, because we can't buy the parts for what we can buy the module for. But we could buy a board that, since it is already a half thickness board, we could make our own carrier board that captures the Pico, right? And then breaks out those USB pins for relatively inexpensive.
Yeah.
All we would be doing is getting a half or even a thinner sized board, reflow soldering the Pico module to it, and then we'd have our pins. No problem.
So there's one other way to do this too.
And
is
we could put in that other power pin that we always want. You know, the power reset, so you don't have to keep plugging and unplugging.
The boot, yeah.
Yeah, one other thing you could do too is just route out a rectangle right here. It doesn't have to go to the edge of the board, just enough that you can put the plug here, go down, and slide in. So you just need a 1/4 inch of clearance on the back end.
Yeah. I wonder if they have an edge launch USB that's angled like 5 or 15 degrees or something.
They've definitely got the 90-degree ones.
Yeah, but that would be
You
pretty
go
high
straight up.
profile.
Yeah, it'd be sticking out the wrong direction.
That there gives me a good idea, Elliot. For the people that want to add USB but don't want to mess with the bottom pads and alignment, you could have a cutout on the board so that area is open, and you could just solder like jumper wire.
Oh, that's a good point too. Yeah.
You see what I'm getting at, Mark? He gave a look. Okay.
Just drill. No. I'm eating, and I thought I was about to uneat something.
Okay.
So that was just like, do I need to go off screen? No, dude, we're good. This is the last piece.
No,
So, yeah.
Sister and I had Raising Canes.
I found it interesting. I was watching the new product show from Adafruit this week, and one of their redone boards that she's working on is they've got a little. It's an RP20, but it's 2040, but it's in a. I forget the name of the board layout.
Feather?
There's a board layout that keyboard people
Yeah,
use.
I sent that to Mark.
And when she redid it, she broke out the data pins as edge connect as an additional pair of castellated edge connectors.
I sent that to Mark earlier. Yeah, it's
I was like,
I don't know what
I
they
know
call
what
it.
that's for.
Isn't it like the Keeb 2040?
Yeah,
or something
Keep
like that?
24. Yeah.
It's pink. It's
That's their latest color that they're picking on.
it's
things.
the micro. I think it's based on like the Pro Micro
Yeah, that's
footprint. Yeah, I sent that to Mark, and I'm like, man, I probably would have used that. But then you'd be kind of stuck with like a matrix layout because there's not many pins broken out.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's small. Yeah.
There's another person that made they call a stamp version that has like connections on all 4 sides, and it's tiny and embeddable.
Yeah, that would be a good layout for this. Or 3-sided, high pin count, even like a point. These things are all broken out on 0.1 headers, right? This board could be 1/4 the size if they did 0.05 inch, 1.27 millimeter pitch spacing, like you see on RF modules.
Yeah, how many pins do you get on an ESP32? It's close to this, isn't it?
Yeah, something. I mean, it's within the right order of magnitude.
They're not all as useful, but there are a good number of
Yeah.
them.
Interesting. So, Elliot, man, I like it. You're making great progress.
Yeah, this was my second revision. I've already revised this like 2 more times. I really liked Jesse's NeoPixels on the back. So this is the piece of acrylic for the next one. And what I'm going to do is have some shining down, and then it's going to basically be like an edge lit piece of acrylic around the perimeter of the thing.
Yeah, that's my goal. Is this logo actually has like a gear behind it, like a 2-color gear,
Right.
opposite white and black, and then it's going to sit on that. Probably not the keyboard form, but the light hanging on the wall form.
Have you seen those lamp shades they make that are like, they project like a geometric pattern, but they're actually the lampshade itself is like spherical?
Yes.
You got to
So
get
cool.
that gear to project off the back
Oh.
of it with a little shroud that casts a shadow that looks perfect.
I saw one of those
I
on
want-
Twitter today.
I want something that'll give me, you'd be able to take a picture and give me the spherical layout that you would need to project that with a light bulb in the middle.
Yep.
It is so hard to do the math to figure those out.
I'm waiting for
Elliot?
someone else to come up with that.
Elliot, sir, you've got a countdown timer on your screen there. Just warning you.
Oh, I do. Interesting.
Yeah. Low
I don't
voltage or
know.
something. I don't know.
Oh, it just doesn't want me to continue whatevering.
Ah.
I plugged a DSLR in here, so
Nice.
it's actually working. Usually it projects the menu on the thing, so finally figured out how to turn that off.
Brian, do you have Netflix?
Yes.
There is a show I watched recently that you might enjoy. It's called Metal Shop Masters. And I want to say episode 5 or 4, somewhere in that range of episode 4 to 6, they had a challenge where they had to make a sculpture that projected a shadow that was different than the sculpture.
Interesting. I'll have to go watch that. I like some of those shows. Forge and Fire was beyond awesome.
But that might solve your problem of, if the projection thing, it might give you an idea of how they came about doing that without doing any math.
Yeah.
Math is hard, right?
I got a math teacher for a wife. It's not that hard, but
I think you could trial and error into some simple patterns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Elliot, I want to know about that resin printer, man. How much do those things run for?
So
cool.
I got the cheapest one on some random Amazon day. It's like $140.
What brand?
Voxel Lab.
Oh, I think I've heard of that.
I wouldn't say it's amazing, and having never used any other ones, I don't know how it compares, but it seems like they're all quite similar. You want one that's monochrome. I think
faster.
originally they started with like just cell phone screens where you only really need one color, not 3, so some of the pixels are wasted. So you get a better resolution with a monochrome screen, less space in between the pixels, and
they're faster, and I think they destroy the screen less. Like they last longer.
Yeah, I haven't had any trouble with that.
I think it has to do with the UV. I think they hold up better to the UV because they're acting as a UV mask.
Yep, exactly. I don't doubt it. But yeah, this one's got like a 2K screen, and it's roughly the size of a, regular cell phone. You print anything that dimension in X, Y, and taller in Z. Biggest struggles are getting the thing to stick to the side you want. So it's got like a build plate that lifts. You want your part to stay stuck to that and not stick to the bottom of the vat full of goop. So sometimes you get the wrong answer. You come out and you've printed a really flat version of what you were hoping for.
So let me ask you guys. So I put in this art requirement this round, right? You had to do something artistic, no rectangles, right? That was the rule. How do you think that's played out? Because not everybody likes that, even though it's not. I mean, I'm not holding a gun to their head to do it or anything, but I personally really like what it's done.
I like some of the ones we've come up with, but I think there is some resistance.
I tend to want it to be functional and kind of is at odds with being just for fun macaroni pictures.
Yeah, but you did functional and non-rectangular.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say it's very artistic.
Really? Why not?
That's the exact opposite of a circle. I actually have a couple other ideas I'd like to try that are more fun. But
yours is geometric art, right?
Fair enough. But yeah.
I don't know. I go ahead.
Oh, you go.
I was just going to say, I think yours is artistic myself. I think it's very artistic. It's technical art. It's not, the Mona Lisa or anything, no offense, but I think I think that's art. I think Jesse's is art. I think Brian's is moo.
Yeah, the ideas I have that are more artistic don't say macro pad to me. They say badge, Christmas ornament, or some kind of other like interesting object, but not necessarily like a one that's functional as an input device.
Yeah,
That's okay, man. The real reason that I implemented that, it forces you to import a board shape. Right? You've got to make a board shape somewhere else and bring it in, which is a challenge. When you're making things, my office is destroyed right now. I haven't even had time to rearrange things. But oftentimes when you're making things that have to go into a case or whatever, you're physically constrained with your dimensions, right? Jesse, I think you had this problem at work recently. Haven't you?
All the time at my last job, because everything was small.
So, and they want small because you can fit more boards on a panel, which then drives the cost per board down. And for other reasons too, but that's one of the reasons everybody wants to cram everything they can into as little space as possible. You said you're inspired to make other things though, Elliot?
Yeah, I've got some other ideas.
Like what?
Well, I posted one a while back in the forum that was that like COVID-19 virus cartoon shape.
I saw that one. That was
so
fun.
that definitely had to be imported. Yeah, I mean that's the only one I've actually sketched up. So, but yeah, I have ideas all the time. I try to forget most of them so I don't get too distracted.
How's your design competition coming along?
Haven't done much on it in the last couple of days, but I feel all right about it. I'm going to need to come back around and see and probably ask some questions about what all the like a complete design or what manufacturer documentation actually consists of. Obviously, it's the files, the Gerber files, and the drill file, whatever. But also, it sounds like there's some other documentation. So curious to know what else goes along with the PCB design normally.
So you get to basically negotiate with your fabricator and assembler on what is acceptable and what's not. A board that is 100% perfect all the time is pretty unachievable. So how out of tolerance is it okay to be, right? So let's say you call out, for whatever reason, 5 mil traces, but in some spots of the board, they didn't etch quite right. Maybe they over etched a little. So in some parts of the board, they're 4 mil. Is that okay? Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. What about your vias? If your vias break out, can your vias break out, up to 90 degrees? On a class 2 board, they can. On a class 3 board, they can't break out at all. You need 2 mils annular ring on the top, like 1 mil on the center. So you get to specify all sorts of things that are okay and not okay. And that becomes part of the negotiation on the price of your board. If that makes sense.
Yep. Nope. Makes sense. Just like anything else. Tolerances, specifications, what materials must be used. They need certificates.
Yep. And you can say, part of it is going to be figuring out what your board stack's going to be. Are you going to 2-layer, 4-layer? Is this going to be a sequential stack up or a core? You want sequential. Are we going to make this, let's say it's 1.6 millimeter thick? What's the tolerance on that? Are you going to make that with combination of like 1080 and 106 prepregs? All of that's negotiated. So the part of that's all the documentation. Now, that being said, for most projects, you can just throw your files at them and run, and it's going to be fine.
I did that right here.
Yeah.
20 bucks.
It's when you're starting to do real technical things, like, you're wanting to run, PAM4 112 gigabits per second. I think that's slow now for PAM4. Or if you're wanting to do some RF work and, you want some specific Rogers or polyimide core materials. When you're doing special stuff, that's when you really need to worry about it. Most of us, it's good enough. Jesse, you can probably chime in on that with a great deal of authority.
Yeah, so what we did was we supplied Gerber files, and then we usually supplied a PDF document that was like a drawing, and it had like dimensions that are critical, like hole spacing and outer dimensions and how we wanted our V-scores. And we usually gave them a panel drawing too. And then they would make the panel per our drawing, because we didn't make our own panel Gerbers. We'd usually give them a single board Gerber and an array and a drawing, and they give us back panel Gerbers, and we would verify them. A lot of times you'll see, besides the Gerber files, you'll see a drill drawing, which is it just has like shapes of the drills and stuff and symbols. And then you can put other documents in there, like fab notes, or you can have a separate fab notes layer, and they'll say things like, this is a castellated slot, or I want copper out to here. There's all these, extra layers that you can call out. Usually what I do is when I send Gerbers, I have an art.txt or something inside there that explains what all those layers are. So then they kind of know. If you're not doing assembly, you don't need your you don't need your position report, which, what do you call it, Mark? XYRS?
XYRS or Centroid file,
Centroid.
pick and place file. There's a lot of different names for it.
You don't need your paste file, because that's, unless you're doing stencils, or if they're making stencils, if they were going to assemble. So if you're a KiCad user and you go through like Osh Park, you can just give them your PCB file. Like, you don't even make Gerbers.
I saw that.
I use Osh Park all the time to view what my board would look like. So kind of like a Gerber viewer, but like lazily, because I just put my board file in there. And then you catch a lot of things looking through a Gerber viewer or at like Osh Park by uploading your board. I recommend always looking at your Gerber files before you send them off, because you'll see things that you just don't notice otherwise when you're scooting through the layers in a Gerber viewer.
Yeah, I've seen that also. It's kind of alarming sometimes. So I did a couple of those little boards that hold a switch, and I made my own little panel with V cuts in it, but the Gerber viewer doesn't. Well, you have too many intersecting edge cuts, and it ends up not showing any of the routed holes or cutouts in the board. So it's like half useful and half alarming when it doesn't look right, but it is right.
I'm going to share something with you right now that this is going back to Elliot's question. It just took me a minute to find it. So, friend of mine, Joe Grand, great guy, by the way, if you've never had a chance to meet him, he designed this pizza compass for Wired. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yes.
But we built that board, and we worked fast. Like, he called me, or no, he either called me or emailed me. I think he emailed me. It was like 6:45 a.m. Hey, Mark, I'm doing this project. How fast can you get this back to me? So I'm like, man, we'll overnight it. I don't care. You have the files now. It'll be in your hands tomorrow morning. No problem. And then he's like, yeah, I need that because then I need to assemble it. And I'm like, why are you assembling it? He's like, what do you mean? You guys can't assemble it that fast. I'm like, yeah, we can. For you, it's done. So he gets us his files, and this blazing fast turnaround time. I mean, it was like a day fab, a day assembly back in his hands. And then he emails me. He's like, hey, Mark, there's a problem with one of the boards. I'm like, well, what's the problem? He's like, well, take a look. And he sends me this huge resolution file. And this is what he sends me. This is what I see. And I'm thinking, what am I looking at? He's like, it's misaligned. And I'm like, what do you mean it's misaligned? So, I'm actually pulling up Photoshop and trying to set up a scale and like figuring out how much this is off, because this obviously has a module plug into it. And I'm like, Joe, man, it doesn't look that bad. And he's like, what are you talking about? Well, here's what I missed. This is one of the boards we sent him. Now, there's a reason that it was this misaligned. Doesn't matter. So I start going back and forth with the person who was responsible for this. And it actually stirred up a little bit of dust because I'm like, what are you doing shipping this out? He's like, well, what do you mean? There's no fab drawing. Like, what? Way wrong answer, you know. But
the
obviously,
tolerance is the moon. Then
what's that?
the tolerance is the moon. There's no requirements.
Hey, you stuck it on there.
Obviously, it's a visible fault here, and you know this obviously needed to be reworked. Now, the reason it wasn't caught by QC is because we were actually using this board as the demo. We videotaped like every process that the board went through. So this one actually got skipped on QC because we were on such a compressed time scale. But if you don't call it out in your fab drawing, you've got no recourse if this comes back to you this way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally makes sense.
So you want to specify stuff. And if you specify, you know, these things need to be located. Brian, you're a machinist. How would you specify? Is it parallelism or?
Yeah. You know, they've got to be, you know, if I was going to go that route, yeah, parallelism. They got to be parallel. They have to be so far apart. You know, the ends need to, you know, one end needs to be lined up exactly.
Yeah, I probably would have called out 2 dimensions, like over here on the left-hand side. I would have called that out, and then again over on the right-hand side and just called out distances between them.
Yeah.
Myself, because I don't really know how to call out parallelism on a PCB. I don't know how to do it on a regular drawing. I could look it up.
You shouldn't really have to, like.
No, this should never.
Case.
This should never have left our shop, and that the initial response to the line worker that was responsible for that was like, well, so what? Was the wrong answer.
Big wrong answer.
that response made it all the way up to the president and owner of the company. It did not go over well. But the point is, you know, we saw that was a problem internally and we addressed it, right? We ended up crediting Joe back the whole cost of his order over that mistake. Just gave him his money back because that's not the kind of thing that we want to do. And it's not the kind of thing that should have left our shop. But if it had been, by the way, we would do that for anybody, not just Joe Grand, not just our friends, right? We would do that for any customer, but not everybody will. If you don't specify it, if you don't call it out, it's on you as the engineer, because they delivered a part with headers on it. That's what they were contractually obligated to do. They weren't obligated to make sure they were aligned unless we said they're obligated to make sure they're aligned. So another good reason to get first articles from, if you're going to do a large order of something, you know, let's say you want 1,000 boards.
Yeah.
Send me one. Let me see what it looks like. Send me 10.
Yep.
I think does an advance do free first orders or free like inspection order ones?
Yeah, Advanced and Royal both do free first article service.
Evening, Matthew.
Absolutely. Hey, Matthew. Nice
Good
to meet
evening.
you.
Nice
Good evening.
nice to finally talk to y'all. I've been participating some, not as much as I would like to. You can see I'm in my garage, which is my work area. I run a couple heaters in here when I wrap presents for Christmas, but it gets okay. Just thought I'd pop in, you know, give a few comments. You've been talking about the shape of the board. I think I showed off my concept for the, I'm calling it the bat pad, bat-shaped reference to what we do in the shadows. I think I commented last week or the week before about some ideas for a soundboard and playing with that, and just having something's going on outside. Having a good time. It's purely a hobby. I think I probably found you through Hackaday. and I've done one board before. I designed it and had it fabbed. Never actually did anything with it because I had to replace my garage door opener, and I got a smart garage door opener instead of retrofitting mine.
Okay.
So
you're finding it valuable, though, the course?
Oh, yeah. My biggest challenge, I think, right now is going to be figuring out how to do the shape of the board and what to do with the artwork and the solder mask and everything. That's it.
So, yeah, that's going to be next week.
Right.
So this week, we have to just capture the schematic.
Yep.
I spent pretty much the whole day doing a rundown on how to lay out your board, start to finish, including importing a board shape. Although
Okay.
I did it for DipTrace. The KiCad folks are doing it a little different. Does anybody have the ability to share a screen and do a quick board shape import for our friend Matthew, our new friend Matthew? Matthew, I can't tell you how happy I am to see somebody else on here.
Yeah, I heard you commenting about you have no idea how many people are doing any kind of activity in the course. And
no, I can look it up.
Or
right, I can see who logs in. That number I know. I don't know it today or this week or last because, well, I've been busy and I haven't looked. But I know it 2 weeks ago. But just because they're logging in doesn't mean they're doing anything.
Right.
They could just be logging in and reading. Right. I don't know what's happening on the other end of things. Building community is something that I definitely wanted to do this time. And I think we're doing it. We're just doing it in a different spot.
Right.
It's happening in Discord.
Oh, yeah. I'm lurking and reading most everything there. I've popped in a few times.
Is there any reason that you think people lurk instead of participate?
Well, I'll tell you, I was waiting for the stream to start tonight, and I was going to jump in right away and comment, but waiting for my daughter to get out of something and then driving. And
just life.
Not sure I wanted to jump in on a live stream like this. And like I said, heard you talking about the adventures with the board shapes and thought I'd throw my 2 cents in there.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like we're ready to share. Somebody. Who do we have, Brian?
Oh, it was putting up his.
Mm-hmm.
I got here first. Machine, so, yeah, I'd be happy to share. So, this is one of the drawings I did, and I'm using Inkscape and the SVG2 Shenzhen extension.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you a quick rundown of how I think I did it. So the best thing to do is to start with a blank document and use this prepare document button. I don't know if it's not necessarily the best thing. You have to do it.
It's kind of necessary. It doesn't quite work unless it's got its own layer names. I tried today.
So I think you can name your layers to match, but it's easier to go this way. So pick the layers you feel like importing eventually. You can have them all in this document and just not draw on them. What it does is it resizes the page, and then it also creates these layers. And they're pretty straightforward. Whatever you draw here is going to end up on the, essentially it's a footprint. Well, it's not a footprint. It's just layers, and it actually creates a new PCB. So this one, what I've drawn is, I tried to use different colors, and actually I might even have an example. If you're not sure on how to do your solder mask and stuff, I'm not sure either, but it can help to draw it a whole bunch of times. So I did this. This is just one sketch, but what I did was basically drew a picture, and then I broke it into components based on what should be all the same color, at least in my opinion. Okay. So I kind of drew like an outline and then some accent colors and then some other things. But basically you're kind of limited to maybe a palette of three colors. And then 3 to 4, I guess. Would you guys agree? You get solder mask, you get silkscreen, you get copper, And then you can also have nothing, which is kind of the color of like a hearing aid, I guess, right?
Yeah, and you can have sometimes you get a little bit of a difference with solder mask with copper and solder mask without copper. Sometimes they'll give you a little bit of difference, but here's an example of no mask.
We're gonna have to make you big there.
All right.
There
So
you go.
this is no mask. This is actually clear. So
And that
That's
was
bare board.
yep, that's the fiberglass material.
Okay.
and that, sir, was a cool board.
Yeah, I got it right there. So
So yeah, there's
Wow.
you can kind of guess unless you want to pay for like real color printing, which is possible, but you can kind of pick from the common combinations. Green and white is the natural one. So like I've been using JLC PCB because it really is very cheap and really fast. So they put white silk on everything except for white boards. So you can't mix like red and black easily with some of the cheaper services. So I just kind of started drawing and duplicated my drawing like 40 times to see what the different combinations would look like in different areas. It was probably more effort than it was worth. But effectively, or essentially, what you end up with is here. So this would be edge cut layer, which just has a line here.
Okay.
The line weight I don't think matters. Probably should be 0, or actually it doesn't. We'll just say it doesn't matter. And then copper, other copper. Silk screen is straightforward. Solder mask is actually kind of interesting. If we import this, sorry. So this looks like this is going to end up where I don't want solder mask. So these shapes, the positive areas, the red areas, are actually like anti-solder mask.
It's a negative.
Yeah. So from here, let's see if it works.
one thing to
Export.
note, like I think there's something to do with contrast. I had yellow in one of my designs and didn't export that layer. So, and I don't know if there's like any rules written somewhere how to use this, but I struggled until I got some colors that actually exported. I think it was yellow that was like not exporting.
That could be. It may do something with dark versus light instead of just where the outlines are.
Yeah.
One thing to be careful of, just for future reference for people, is don't take an existing drawing and try to set it up, use that setup drawing function. It deletes everything and then makes all the new layers, or deletes it at the same time, whatever. But I haven't lost it because I you do things with copies, but everything will disappear if you I tend to make a new file, do the setup, and then paste things in rather than try to adjust an existing one.
I'm going to have to take off for the night.
Well, Jesse, thanks for coming by, man. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, good to see you.
Always good seeing you.
Thank you.
It's good talking to you guys, and see you next week and in Discord.
Okay, buddy. Thank you.
Yep.
Cool.
So, Elliot, is it exporting now?
It did. I lost my audio there for a moment.
Okay.
We're back. Yeah, so I decided to export as a module, but I think I've done this as a project as well. If you choose project, you're probably going to want to start with your drawing and then create the project and then start editing it with KiCad later. So let's see what happened. Where are we here? So in the folder for this project that I just exported to, I have this module, which I think is basically
it's a footprint.
A footprint.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see why that didn't open. What did that message say? Library not found in footprint library table. Let's ignore that.
Yeah, well,
And let's go to the PCB editor and just add it. How do you add a footprint? Place footprint? Do I need to add it to a library? I'll tell you what, I think I did project. Okay, so let me.
When I've done a library, I've had an existing .pretty folder and exported it to that folder, and it works fine. It comes right in, but you can move it later.
Okay, well, here's sort of the same thing. So I opened the footprint editor, imported it to my library here, and I think I'm going to have to save as, we'll just call it test2. That's invalid. Okay, cool. So a footprint exists. I have a problem as well with this that I did end up resolving. So place footprint, now it should be in my library. So this is good that we made it this far. Also bad that, well, it's not bad, but when it's stuck to your cursor like this, I think this is basically your one and only opportunity to put it somewhere you care about accurately. After that, there's no handle to snap to for this irregular shape. So what I would do is somewhere over here is 0, 0. Stick it on there. And this way, if you ever need to edit your board outline and re-import it, you can use 0, 0 as your reference point. So you don't have to worry about snaps or other objects in your file. So what we get is
you can always oh man, I don't remember where I figured out where the origin was when it exported it, but it is someplace out in the middle. It's not very predictable, but if you need to place it, you know where it was. You can always edit it and redo and just change the coordinates rather than trying to drag. But yeah, it's hard.
Boy,
So
I tell you, every time that I have a bad day with dip trace, I get on with you guys and you show me how KiCad works.
Well, it does this, or somebody did this. And if you wanted to preview it in 3D, you will find that it says, cannot determine the board outline. And you get this kind of...
Yeah.
So it's not a closed shape?
It's not. Now, it actually sort of worked, but it's all kind of funky. So
yeah, you have to do things. It's not capable of trimming things out like you would expect the outline to do.
Yes.
I had to really massage my drawing and only make it have that outside contour. None of the inside stuff was on the.
So you're saying where those spikes come inside of that outer circle.
Yeah, so let me get over here. I'll show you what I had to do. So when I drew this, I just made a bunch of overlapping shapes. And I was like, great, I'll just let them overlap. And then, back in the days of paint where it's like black, it'll be black. And you have one black shape that encompasses the whole thing. But no, what you actually have to do is remove all the intersections. You want one shape with a continuous outline and the cutouts. Oops. That is not like this, because with this black part and this black part overlapping, it ends up making like self-intersections and it gets really unhappy.
Yeah, and the thing I found the hard way was I drew this thing I used CorelDRAW. I drew this thing with like a 2 millimeter line width and just drew a line around. That doesn't work. You actually, if you want a line on like the silk screen, you actually have to draw a 2 millimeter thick polygon that goes all the way around the edge.
Right. So this is
just a wide line because there's no width.
The line weight, yeah, there is no line weight. They're just outlines like any CAD program. If you want a solid area, it must be a polygon
a filled
some
polygon.
kind of fill.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I have here is actually, I don't think it matters what you have exactly when you do the export, and mine actually is probably not working because of things like this, which I didn't see. But yeah, so I'll usually have no stroke and or no line weight and just the fill. But that took a lot of effort to clean up. But this was only because, so if we look at the edge cuts, it's actually pretty straightforward. No problem there. And this one, of course, is just a line. There's no fill because the edge cut should just be a line. But it was the silk screen and the solder mask that were, I basically had to take all of the intersecting parts, and there's some things in Inkscape you can do where you can union them together, which takes all the intersections away and makes it one shape, whatever. I ended up to solve this problem, I ended up exporting only the edge cuts layer alone, and because of some magic, it didn't have all these lines pointing to the origin. So then it was just a matter of slapping it down in the same spot, and it lines up, and it's good. The other thing I would point out is once you do this, oops, we get on the edge cuts layer, you can never, well, let me rephrase that. You could totally pick this up and move it because it's a footprint. If you use a DXF and import this into your drawing, you can never pick it up again. It makes every single segment of the polyline its own item, which is quite irritating. You can window over them and select them all, but there's no handle to grab it by, which I guess with the footprint you do have a handle, which is good. So the other thing was you can't, so there's a limitation. If you have an item that's on the wrong layer, you can use the properties menu to move it, but you cannot do that with more than one item selected. So if your edge cut is 8,000 line segments, you can't move it to the silk layer if you accidentally import it in the wrong way. So there's a couple gotchas there based on my limited experience. But once you get it in, let's see if this was the one that's the same shape. Nope, definitely isn't. Anyways, that's the gist of it. Try the plugin with Inkscape if you're into that.
Okay.
Otherwise, importing DXFs is kind of rough. So import graphics. Looks like I already have a DXF in here. Let's
Elliot,
see
how did you learn your way around this? Was there a tutorial online or
a bunch of Google searches? So the contextual electronics videos are short and to the point. I would watch any of those. So I Googled things like import DXF, and they came up as a result. Trial and error is the other way that I've been learning things. But so here's an example of a DXF I just imported onto one of the, I think it's the user drawing layer. And let me ungrid. So this item is single line segment. Now I can say, damn it, this was supposed to be on the edge cuts layer. I can do this. But this is, if I want to move all of these, I can't open the properties. There's no properties menu. So you basically have to import it. And this is the other drawback with the DXF. Say I didn't get this aligned with what I cared about. And actually, I drew a circle to have an origin when I did the import on this. But you can pick it up and move it, but there's no reference point. You can move it an exact distance. You can move it from point to point based on where your cursor is when you pick it up, but it's not very scientific. So DXFs are tricky.
One thing to keep in mind, if once you import something into a footprint, a footprint is a text file. You can go in and edit layer names and such. There needs to be some utilities to do things like change lines, put the lines into polygons and such. But it is handy to be able to edit it, because it. I had trouble getting things onto the edge cuts layer when I started, and that was how I did it. Was I put it on some other layer and then moved it hand by hand. Oh, I did that with the. I'm using the reverse mount LEDs, and I needed a hole in the middle. And to put the square hole in, I had to put an edge cut in. But footprints don't get edge cuts by default. You have to hand edit them. So.
Correct. Yeah, footprints in this version don't have the edge cut layer. They can't. This one does because it was made by the Inkscape extension.
Interesting. So if you had a mid-mount RJ45 or like a mid-mount USB-C, you wouldn't be able to do it in KiCad?
Oh, you could. So say I wanted to put a hole in here for my whatever. Yeah, you can just draw on the edge cuts layer.
Oh, okay. All right.
But if it's part of the footprint, you'd have to edit the text file that defines the footprint.
Got it.
To include it.
So what you're saying is I should stick with dip trace.
Probably. I'm really interested to find out what version 6 is going to be about, but also
I'm so tempted to start using it, but I'll hold off.
Yeah, I wouldn't change horses midstream here. We're close, guys. We're close. 2 weeks.
Yeah, I can't even access that layer. So I ended up importing the edge cuts alone to resolve my crazy edge. But the other thing I was just going to mention, once you've gotten to this point, oh, now it doesn't want to do it at all. Apparently that's our PCB right here. There are options here where you can change the color of the silkscreen, solder mask, solder paste, well, good for solder paste, and the copper. So
and the board.
You can do your. Oh wait, there it is. It's just way over there. Oh, it's way over there. But you can kind of get a rough idea of what it might look like. So that's what I know so far.
Well, thank you for sharing, Sir Elliot.
Gotcha.
Probably be useful if you do happen to still have the resources that you found useful. If we could share those, maybe in the wiki.
Yeah.
Maybe send
Did
those
you
to Brian.
post a link? Post a link to that? I haven't been paying attention.
I don't know at this point. Life's a blur, Elliot. So, but if it's in Discord, we can search for it. But yeah.
Yeah, or just give me a link. I can just slap a whole bunch of stuff on there when I get a chance.
Brian, does Elliot have access to the wiki, or
I think that's limited.
Okay, so I'd be more than happy to give you access to the wiki, the site wiki,
yes.
Which we haven't really done a good job of marketing yet. We should let people know that exists.
We need to do more job of content first. That's
Yeah. Well, there's a lot.
It's going to be useful.
There is a lot of work in this course, let me tell you. So, Matthew, did that help at all? It feels to me like it's the kind of thing you have to get your hands dirty with.
Yeah.
It gave me a starting point, definitely.
Yeah, it took me a day to poke at it and get it to cooperate.
So that is something that you'll need by the end of next week, not this week. So you have a little wiggle room.
Yeah.
So
I also need to sit down and print out my outline and make sure it's going to be sized the way I want it.
Do you have any other comments about the course or questions or anything you'd like?
Not right now.
Okay.
I kind of skipped last week with the schematic layout. I'm going to probably go back and try it again. I made kind of a connection tonight that when you're designing the schematics, you're not connecting them to the footprints. That's when you do the board layout. Came realize that tonight. So,
okay,
do some of that.
2 weeks ago, so it's all connected, right? You've
Yep.
got a footprint library or a land pattern library, a component library, a schematic, and a PCB, and they're all part of this interconnected mesh. So the first thing we did was make the land patterns. Last week was supposed to be making the symbols. This week we're connecting the symbols with wires, and then the next week we're going to take those wires and symbols and turn them into a board. That's
That's the fun part.
Like I said, I made that connection tonight, and it all made a lot more sense.
Oh, good. Hey, man, we're all learning. That's what you're here for, right?
Yeah.
So, looking forward to office hours for Wednesday. Perhaps we could get a overview of our new GitHub and what that's going to be used for. Does that work,
I'll work
Brian
on
and Elliot? Okay, cool. And Matt, come back anytime, man, if you want. I mean, like the first half hour, we were just BSing, but we could spend that half hour, actually sharing screens and doing electrical engineering things. That wouldn't be bad.
And like I said, I picked my daughter up at 8, and then I was driving. So,
Hey, man, it's life, right? What are you going to do? So,
where is the wiki? I'm looking at the website right now, and I don't see it.
what do we have it? I know you renamed it, Brian.
Hold on, I'm looking.
Sure. Hopefully, it's visible. That would be par for the course in what we're doing. So you certainly have
not.
Is it even visible? I don't think it's visible.
I'm not seeing a link to it anywhere. I thought there was, but
I can see it on my end, but I'm administrator. I can see everything. So that is something we will work on, Matthew. We will work on it for you.
Well, it's under. I see it linked under site announcements. Why it's underneath announcements, I don't know.
I see it above site announcements.
Pages and site announcements and the accumulation of knowledge.
Yeah, I see it above site announcements. Let me share the link.
We'll work on
everyone.
Yeah, it's definitely not on there for us.
Okay.
Regular people.
I will figure out how to fix that.
I'll let you do that. I don't have any clue on.
Yeah.
How
Well,
Moodle
Moodle
works.
can be sometimes a little persnickety that way. Where would be a useful spot for this accumulation of knowledge on the course page?
Well, actually, wait a minute. It is on the course page. You go to home, and it's right there on the page. There's the brain, one little paragraph, and it says accumulation of knowledge. It doesn't say what it is or why to go there, but I do see the link.
But you and I gave you special access to it. They're saying they can't see it at all. Oh, Chester, come here, baby.
When I type in that URL you shared, I get, sorry, this activity is currently hidden.
Okay, so it's not visible to course participants then. So that is some sort of a permission issue that I have to figure out. So, okay, well, why not? There's always all sorts of fun stuff to do. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining me. I'm going to go take care of a sick cat. Poor little guy I gave him a little of my Raising Cane's, and it, I guess, didn't sit too well with him. But what are you going to do? He's getting up there in age. But I thank you so much for your time. It was great having you, Elliot, seeing your resin printer and your project. I like it. It's art. I don't care what you say. I like it.
Fair enough.
And then Wednesday, we'll take a look at our brand new brand spanking new GitHub and figure out how to use that. Elliot, we might need to make you an account there too if you want one. I don't know how all that's working. I'm letting Brian take lead on that. And if you guys have any questions on how to do your schematic, let me know. Board layout questions are going to be the next week, but we'll do that. As far as next week with Thanksgiving, you guys still want to do a Monday, Wednesday office hours?
I'm out of town on Monday, so I don't care.
Okay. Elliot, you want to come or do you care? I can
Just
be here.
Just do whatever works, and I'll show up or I won't.
Hey man, that makes a lot of sense. So I just didn't know if one day would be better than the other. So with that, we'll end it. Thank you to all our sponsors: Advanced Assembly, Royal Circuit Solutions, DigiKey, Altium. Who else do we have? Walkwe with Yuri. Yuri's great. TheAnalog.io. If you guys haven't signed up for that newsletter, I like it. It's kind of interesting. And everybody else who's making this course possible, I really appreciate you guys. It's a lot of work for me. It would be impossible without your help. So thank you so much. And Matthew, nice to meet you. Come back.
And you. Thank you.
All right. We'll see y'all Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific. Bye.
Yeah, Mark.